There's a deep, primal urge in all of us that connects height with something bigger, with power, with divinity, with a kind of immortality. Long before we had the math for load-bearing stresses or the ability to forge steel beams, we were stacking stones, one on top of the other, just to get a little closer to the sky. This isn't just a story about architecture. It's a story about human ambition itself. It has the story of our Babel instinct, that relentless drive to break free from the flat earth and conquer the vertical frontier. From the ancient mud bricks of Mesopotamia to the gleaming glass needles piercing the clouds in Dubai and New York. This is the history of our race to the top. Our story begins in the deserts of ancient Egypt. For nearly 4,000 years, the pharaohs defined what it meant to be tall. Around 2560 BC, the Great Pyramid of Giza was completed, soaring to a height of 146 meters, or 481 feet. It was a masterpiece of sheer mass. The engineering logic was simple, yet brutal. To build high, you must build wide. The pyramid was a man-made mountain, a triumph of geometry that distributed its immense weight across a massive base. It wasn't built for the living, but for the data grand stairway to the heavens for the pharaoh Khufu, and for millennia. The Great Pyramid stood alone, the undisputed tallest structure on Earth. It held that title until the year 1311. Across a vast ocean of time, a new kind of vertical ambition was rising in Europe. The Middle Ages brought a fundamental shift from mass to light. Gothic architects weren't building tombs. They were building engines for prayer. Their goal was to create spaces that pulled your eyes and your soul upward. But stone is heavy, and gravity is a relentless force. How do you build a stone wall high enough to touch heaven without it collapsing under its own weight? The genius solution was the flying buttress on external stone rib that propped up the walls from the outside, like a giant kickstand. This innovation allowed walls to become thinner and windows to grow larger, flooding cathedrals with what felt like divine light. In 1311, the central spire of Lincoln Cathedral in England reportedly shot past the Great Pyramid, reaching 160 meters. Even though that spire collapsed in a storm a couple of centuries later, the message was clear. Humanity had learned to trick gravity. By the 19th century, the Stone Age of architecture had hit a solid wall. You could only stack masonry so high before the walls at the bottom had to be so thick there was no room left for a lobby. To go higher, we needed a completely new material. And then came the Industrial Revolution. In 1889, Gustave Eiffel shocked the world and, frankly, horrified the artists of Paris with his tower. It wasn't a building in the traditional sense. It was a lattice of wrought iron, a skeleton with no skin. Standing at 300 meters, or 984 feet, it demolished every record in existence. It proved that metal could carry loads that stone could only dream of. But this new height created a very practical problem. Human legs. Nobody wanted to rent an office on the 50th floor if they had to climb the stairs every day. The unsung hero of the skyscraper isn't an architect, but a mechanic named Elisha Otis. In 1854, at the Crystal Palace exhibition in New York, Otis stood on a hoisting platform, high above a crowd. He then ordered his assistant to cut the thick rope holding him up. The crowd gasped, expecting to see a tragedy, but the platform dropped only a few inches and then stopped dead. All safe. Gentlemen, all safe, Otis announced. He had just invented the safety brake. Before Otis, elevators were death traps. After Otis, the upper floors suddenly became the most desirable real estate in the city. The penthouse was born, with a steel frame to hold the building up and a safe elevator to move people through it. The stage was set for the golden age of the skyscraper. The battlefield was the bedrock of Manhattan. In the roaring 1920s, the American economy was booming, and corporate egos were bigger than ever. A fierce rivalry ignited between two titans of the auto industry, Walter Chrysler of Chrysler Corp. And John Raskob, the mastermind behind General Motors. Construction began on the Bank of Manhattan Trust Building at 40 Wall Street, with the clear goal of becoming the world's tallest. At the same time, uptown, the Chrysler Building was rising. The architects of 40 Wall Street secretly added a few extra feet to their design at the last minute to secure the title. They finished, celebrated, and declared victory. But Walter Chrysler had an ace up his sleeve. Hidden inside the fire shaft of his new tower, his architect, William Von Allen, had secretly assembled a 185-foot steel spire. On a crisp October day in 1929, just as 40 Wall Street was popping champagne, that spire was hoisted up from within the building and bolted into place in just 90 minutes. The Chrysler building had snatched the title. It was a magnificent Art Deco needle, a shimmering monument to the machine age. But its victory was fleeting. Just 11 months later, the Empire State Building rose like a rocket ship. Built at a jaw-dropping pace of 4.5 stories per week during the Great Depression, it was the first building to smash through the 100-story ceiling. It would remain the tallest building in the world for nearly 40 years, a powerful symbol of American resilience during its darkest economic hour. For decades, the Empire State Building seemed untouchable, but by the 1960s, a new engineering challenge had emerged. As buildings grew taller, the wind became a more formidable enemy than gravity. A super-tall building acts like a giant sail, and high-altitude winds can cause it to sway so much that people inside feel seasick. The solution came from Fazla Ramond Khan, a structural engineer so brilliant he was called the Einstein of structural engineering. Khan realized that the traditional steel grid of the Empire State was inefficient for extreme heights. He proposed a revolutionary concept: the tubular system. Instead of relying on a forest of columns inside the building's strength would come from its exterior walls, all tied together to act like a rigid, hollow tube. He first tested this idea with the John Hancock Center, and then perfected it with the Sears Tower, now known as the Willis Tower, in Chicago. Completed in 1973, the Sears Tower was designed as a bundle of 9 tubes of varying heights. This ingenious design essentially confused the wind, breaking up the airflow and keeping the massive building stable. It held the title of world's tallest for 25 years, marking the absolute peak of American dominance in the skyscraper timeline. As the 21st century dawned, the center of gravity for vertical ambition shifted east. The booming economies of Asia and the oil-rich Gulf states wanted to announce their arrival on the world stage, and what better way than with a record-breaking tower? The race finally culminated in Dubai. The goal wasn't just to break the record, but to completely shatter it. The Burj Khalifa, finished in 2010, is an engineering marvel, standing at an incredible 828 meters, or 2,717 feet. It's over half a mile high. It didn't just beat the previous record holder, Taipei 101, it soared past it by over 300 meters. To build this titan, engineers used a Bucharest core design, a tripod shape inspired by a local desert flower. This 3-winged shape provides immense stability against the powerful desert winds. But the wind at half a mile up is tricky. To stop the building from rocking back and forth, a phenomenon known as vortex shedding, the architects intentionally disrupted the wind. The building steps back in a spiraling pattern as it rises, confusing the wind currents so they can never organize into a force strong enough to push the tower over. The Burj Khalifa isn't just a building. It's a vertical city, a testament to the fact that we've moved from conquering gravity to mastering the atmosphere itself. So why do we do it? Economically, building super talls rarely makes perfect sense. They are incredibly expensive, difficult to maintain, and often sit partially empty for years. But the Triumphant Tower has never been purely about money. From the Great Pyramid to the Burj Khalifa, these structures are markers of civilization. They are how a society boldly declares, "We were here, and we were capable of greatness." As we look to the future, with proposals like the Jeddah Tower aiming to break the 1-kilometer barrier, the story is far from over. We are a species grounded on the earth, but forever obsessed with the sky. And as long as technology gives us a way to push higher, humanity will continue its relentless climb, brick by brick, beam by beam, toward the triumphant stars. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.